Hi, my name's Andrew Betts. The company I'll be reporting on today is Albertsons, the supermarket chain operating primarily in the southern and the western United States. Albertsons may not be the most exciting company, but I think that they're a very solid company with decent growth prospects, and I put a buy rating on their company. I think they have a very experienced management team that can help them navigate through the future with rising inflation, cost of goods sold coming up, and also the consumers on the other end, complaining about prices in their store going. I think that they have a moderate moat, mostly made up of their private label brands. They have a very positive mark on their communities, headlined by their carbon reduction, and they do a lot of food donating in their communities. My DCF model has them at about 20% undervalued, which is the main reason I would put a buy rating on Albertsons. Little overview, Albertsons is the second largest supermarket in the United States, second to Kroger. They were founded in Boise, Idaho, and currently Kroger is trying to buy out Albertsons. They had already agreed on a deal, but now they are getting sued, antitrust lawsuit, and it does not look good. The market is pricing in almost 100% chance of this falling through. So this is not calculated into any of my cash flow models, and I very much doubt that this will end up going through. Their management team is headlined by their CEO Vivek Sankaran. He is been the CEO of Albertsons for about 5 years. Prior to that, he was the CEO of Pepsi, which I think gives him some good insight into the upstream operations from Albertsons. And then their CFO is Sharon McCollum. She has plenty of experience, but I did notice that on their website it lists her as being in charge of IT and being in charge of supply chain, which does not really seem like the main duties of a CFO. So I would kind of like to see her focusing more on the financial and maybe get a few other people up there to focus on the operational stuff like IT and supply chain. Their pay structure for all equity pay, they have a 3-year vesting period, one third vests each year. So that's somewhat of an incentive to keep their CEOs or their C-suite executives on the board. And then they also have minimum amounts of equity that has to be held by their C-suite. The most has to be held by the CEO. So this gives all of their C-suite a stake in the performance of the company. Their moat, they have a few things setting them apart from their big competition. The biggest thing that is a moat for all big supermarket chains would be barrier to entry. It'd be almost impossible or not almost impossible, but it'd be very difficult for a new entrant to expand and have many supermarket chains across the U.S. simply because it just takes so much capital and so much time. Another thing that they have over new entrants would be their brand loyalty. When you're going to a big chain such as Albertsons, there's a certain amount of surety in what you're going to get, and smaller local chains just simply don't have that surety. And then their main edge over their other large competitors like Walmart, Target, Kroger is their private label. Their biggest private label brand is Signature Select, which makes has many different goods in their store, and their private label brands make up about 20% of their total sales. So that's a pretty significant chunk of of sales for something that can only be bought in Albertsons stores. Like I said before, they have a positive mark. They have reduced their carbon emissions 21% from 2019 to 2022, and they're committed to being net zero by 2040. They've also noticed that a lot of the carbon emissions they contribute to are coming from upstream in their supply chain, and they have gotten many of their suppliers to commit and keep track of carbon emission goals, and a lot of them are currently meeting those goals. They also have 90% of their stores nationwide have a weekly food donation set up to their communities. And in 2022, they provided 245 million meals to their communities, which is a very impressive number, and it certainly helps less fortunate people in their communities. As far as mispricing goes, I did not use a dividend discount model, but I used a dividend growth model for my terminal value. I couldn't do a dividend growth model as they've only paid dividends for 3 years, so it was not consistent enough to really have a consistent number. But in my DCF, I used both one with dividend growth model for the terminal value and an exit multiple. The exit multiple I used, which was 6.5, which is a slight increase to their EV to EBITDA than it currently is, but they currently have a much lower multiple than their competition, so I see that growing. I used a rather moderate 3% growth rate for both in perpetuity and through the 5-year period for their revenue, and I came up with a price target of $24, which would be 20% upside to their current stock price of $20.13. So I think this is a pretty strong buy opportunity. As far as risks, one major risk for any supermarket chain is the rising inflation. It's both making their input costs higher and it's making consumers upset because they're having to spend more for their food. This has been going down recently and then kind of spiked back up, so hopefully it does not keep shooting back up. Another big risk is competition. A chain like Walmart can price lower than they can simply because they have more stores and they have more money. So that's something they need to look out for. The labor market, they employ lots of hourly workers. So if the labor market were to cool down and they weren't able to find as many hourly workers, that could be a very big problem for them. I do not see the Kroger merger as much of a downside risk to the stock price as it's already pricing in almost 100% chance that it falls through. So when it falls through, it should not affect the stock price very much at all. This will either fall through because the lawsuit succeeds, or Kroger or Albertsons may decide to just back out of the deal and avoid the long legal fight. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you.